Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the City Council regular meeting of Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. Call the meeting to order. And before we approve the agenda, we are going to amend it and move the minutes up before the post-election council business. So when you approve the agenda, it has amended.
So moved as amended.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Last time you get to do that.
Okay, so next we have the swearing in of the newly elected city. No, oh, after I amended it, I forgot. Sorry. Okay, now we will have consideration of the minutes of our December meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes of December 3, 5, 10, and 17.
Second.
Any discussion? Is this not really losing it tonight? Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Okay, next we will have the swearing in of our newly elected city officials. To do the honor. And we're going to go alphabetically by last name. School teacher and me. So, Deanna.
Am I going here, here, here?
I will follow directions. See? Okay, so please raise your right hand. And repeat after me. I, Deanna L. Hammond,
I, Deanna L. Hammond,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself
and that I will faithfully and honorably conduct myself
in the office of Cannon Beach City Councilor
in the office of the city of Cannon Beach City Councilor,
to which I have been
to which I have been
elected
elected
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. I, Eric Ostrander,
I, Eric Ostrander,
do solemnly swear that I will support
do solemnly swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of
the
America
Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Oregon,
and that I will faithfully and honorably
and I will faithfully and honorably
conduct myself
conduct myself
in the office of Cannon Beach City Councilor,
in the office of Cannon Beach City Councilor,
to which I have been elected
to which I have been elected
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Does that mean we leave? So now we will say a fond farewell to Nancy and Brandon. Thank you. Yes, thank you. And welcome our new city councilors. Come on up.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, we all settled in, ready to go? Here we go. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have the election of the council president. And the council president will serve at meetings when I'm not available.
I would like to nominate Lisa Kerr as council president.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Counselor Kerr,
Yes.
Counselor Oostvander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Congratulations.
Welcome.
Okay, and next we will have public comment. And if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. I'll call you up to the podium and state your name and mailing address. Please try to keep it under 3 minutes and remember to be kind and respectful. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Richard?
My name is Richard Bertolotti, 171 West Monroe, PO Box 1382, Cannon Beach. First of all, I'd like to thank Brandon and Nancy, who I've worked with in the past on a couple of things, for their service, and to the new council members, welcome to the floor. I'm here to talk about cows. I'm upset about cows. I got an email on December 20th, and I read the Astorian of December 31st. The coastal outside warning system is currently not operational. If the quotes in the Astorian are accurate, the city council and city manager owe the citizens of Cannon Beach a thorough explanation exactly what is going on with cows. It seems to be a really well-kept secret. I've talked to people in the last 7 days in town, at the Legion, at the post office, people playing music, various people that I've come across. 2 people out of all the people I talked about knew that cows was not working. They didn't get the email. They didn't read the article in the Astorian. It's a problem. It's a big problem. So the questions I have, how long has cows been out of order? Why wasn't it fixed immediately? Did the city really agree to take on an obsolete system that is not repairable? Is a copy of the agreement with the fire department available? Is the agreement cancelable? Why did the city agree to take on a system that has previously been operated and maintained by the fire department? Why would the city agree to operate a system that operates outside the city limits? Where is the cow's control equipment located? And why would the city have to find money in the budget? It has substantial contingency funds, substantial. On today's agenda, you're proposing to put $133,000 of additional money into HRAP. Is HRAP more important than cows? You guys have to decide that. The city is putting thousands of visitors and hundreds of residents at risk by having no way of notifying them of a tsunami. Public safety is one of the most important services provided by the city. The replacement of the cow system should be #1 at City Hall right now. Another subject. I received a message from Cannon Beach Public Safety on December 26th. It said that the City Hall EOC will be operating at 5 p.m. until the power outage is restored. What the heck is EOC and where is it? You can't use acronyms in an emergency notice. You have to spell it out, what it is, where it's located, where do I drive to get to it? I mean, come on. You guys need to communicate better with the citizens of your town. As we're all aware, we have no functioning newspaper that serves Cannon Beach. There's nothing. You guys use the Daily Astorian as your public notices. They have an article maybe every 2 or 3 weeks about something in Cannon Beach. The city used to publish a monthly newsletter. It was pretty comprehensive. It listed all the laws that you had changed. It listed coming meetings, committee meetings. It was a very comprehensive, it was a full page in our Gazette, when the Gazette was a real paper. Can you do that again? Can you make that available? send it to people that are interested to get an email of a citywide newsletter. It would really help. I just think you're leaving a lot of people behind. A lot of people don't participate in Facebook. They don't answer their Twitters the minute they get one. They don't answer their text the minute they get one. If you're gonna notify people, you gotta have that cows thing working if we're gonna have a tsunami. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make public comment?
Yeah, Randy Neal has his hand up.
Okay, Randy?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Randy Neal, P O Box 1092. Happy New Year, everyone. I've got a couple of different topics. Some are for tonight, some are for the workshop. Sorry for the bluntness, but there is a time and word constraint. HRAP, can there be a more thorough review of this budget item? Presentation implies volumes and up. In Tolovana, visitors have reached 1 million. Graphs by the chamber, however, imply visitor counts have been just stable. And Tolovana visitor data often reaches 1 million visitors. Besides, why was not this at least highlighted in the spring budget? Is there any other solution to volunteer retention? The request is for 125K, but approval cements an increase in annual spending from 430K to 700K. Hiring cements a PERS commitment. Like the management of CBE, is it prudent to staff these types of activities with PERS city's employees? Cows, first raised after the tsunami warning in January 2022 and transferred, then again after another failure in June 2024, now again in December 2024. There was no mention of this in the spring budget cycle, but there were lots of other items added at the very last minute, including $160,000 for a food pantry canopy. I say redirect that money or use unspent emergency manager money from that vacant position. CBE, good luck in the workshop. When the budget was 2 to 3 times the size of expectations, it took management literally 20 minutes for a solution, taxes. Now, 60 days later, we're on a 3rd session with no suggestions. 2 prospective counselors canvassed in September and October listening to the silent residents. Incumbent counselors wrote newspaper articles and Facebook posts, got surprised by results, and now wonder what people want. Please don't be tempted to begin spending tourism dollars elsewhere. There is no other higher supported project. It is a priority project. It can be done more cheaply and probably without borrowing. Constituents, twice in the last couple of months, I've listened to Zoom discussions that were either critical, uninformed, or less than helpful towards key Cannon Beach organizations. Maybe the largest landowner in town, maybe the 7th largest water user in town. Something about all of this feels wrong. Committees. There's 2 committees going on, one for housing, one for dark sky. I applaud the efforts, support it fully, but why no published meeting schedule, no agendas, no minutes, no Zoom, blue sky laws? Isn't there a desire for community involvement and understanding? We can do better. Last, can we restore the forest corridor at Tolovana during the police department rebuild? The diagrams still do not indicate, trees in that location. It's a no-cost endeavor. We must replant trees somewhere. If it's a line of sight issue, the existing location doesn't provide line of sight. And besides, line of sight sounds like the same thing a homeowner would say just before cutting the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Anyone else in the audience? Okay, thank you. So next on our agenda, we have an update on the storm update.
Karen, did you?
Update on the storm. Evening.
Evening. Congratulations, new council members. Andy Murray and I are going to give you a storm update as your emergency manager and your public works director. We had two storms over the holiday break. One was Tuesday, December 17th, that impacted us for about 4 hours. Pacific Power's official update, the cause of that was obviously high winds, trees down that impacted their transmission lines. The bigger storm happened Christmas Day that took us out just shy of 24 hours. Pacific Power communicated with us that entire time. I have to just pause for a second and commend our account manager from Pacific Power when these things happen. He's up in the middle of the night communicating with me, giving us statuses as she's getting those statuses, and she did a great job during this storm. Similar situation, Pacific Power's official statement of release was just the sheer magnitude of the number of trees that came down. They had impacts from Washington, Oregon, all the way down to California coast, and they had significant damage to their infrastructure. The delay that caused Cannon Beach to come up last compared to some of our sister cities was the magnitude of trees that came down. Our main transmission line that runs behind our public works yard and down through the ECFR had a lot of trees down. They couldn't even get the lines until they could clear the trees to be able to access. So it took them quite a bit of time. They called in extra resources to give their crews a hand, called people in from being off on holiday time to come in and give a hand. So I felt collectively, our team felt that they reacted as quickly as they possibly could. Andy and the team decided it was good to open City Hall at around the 12-hour mark and give folks a place to plug in their apparatuses, whether it's their cell phone, tablets. Some people had some small handheld generators and whatnot that they could power up. We had bottled water here, and we had a small load of wood from our cache site. So if folks needed wood to keep their fireplaces going because they were depleted, we provided that for them. We had about 20 to 25 people that came through that evening and took advantage of that. For public works, was just another storm on the coast. We knew it was coming. We were prepared. The biggest challenge was just the sheer number of trees that were coming down, the high winds that made it dangerous for our crew. But our primary focus was managing those 9 pump stations we have to make sure that generators were operating, trees didn't come down on the pump station, and that we didn't have a potential overflow. The crews did a great job. They worked some very extensive hours that night. We were down 2 people out on medical leave. So Trevor and I were out with the crew, and everybody pitched in, and they did an extraordinary job as usual. The fire department was amazing, clearing the trees. We had a lot of trees down on the south end that completely blocked the streets, which it prevents my crew from being able to move from pump station to pump station. They were fast and they were great. PD was there helping us as well. So everybody did an extraordinary job. Andy, anything I forgot?
No, you covered it all.
Like I say, we knew it was coming. Andy and Trevor and I went up to the cache sites and got the supplies and said, okay, at the 12-hour mark, we're going to open up City Hall and let folks come in and charge up their apparatuses so they can call 911 if they needed it. Checked on some folks locally that we know are on medical devices. One family that is recovering from heart surgery that we were aware of. She was home with her husband by herself and got them some firewood, and things went pretty smoothly despite the conditions. So any questions you have for us.
Thank you so much, Public Works and Emergency Management. That was really, I mean, really nice to know you're there.
Thank you. We have a great team right now, and so I'm really pleased with that Andy's a part of the team and how we work together, and that everybody just jumped in and helped out. We were able to give Bruce and Chief updates, you know, frequently every couple of hours. I was letting them know what was happening, and it went like it normally would for us.
Hopefully that's the last one this winter.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Double more.
I have a question. Is that the standard operating procedure for 12 at the 12-hour mark,
It's a good,
opening up to?
It depends on the weather and the situation. Could be less if it's colder outside, the fact that it was pretty warm. The fact that the power is out most of the time during the day when stores were open and people can go places. I felt like 5 o'clock, okay, when the sun's going down, if it's not up, it's gonna be a good time to open it up based on the weather. So it can change in the future.
we had one of our restaurants open up and they were able to serve folks, which was great because we had lots of visitors here over the holidays. And we were getting lots of people Facebooking and questioning, you know, where they could go to get something to eat and whatnot. So we were thankful for one of the bigger restaurants to be able to open up and provide some candlelight dinners for people. So yeah, I agree with Andy. I think it's a good rule of thumb at the 12-hour mark. I know it's a good time to make our staff pause and take a break just for safety reasons. But if it was an ice storm, we would probably react a little bit differently.
Cool.
So I'd like to add my thanks to Public Works and Emergency Management, the fire department and the police. It took
Thank you.
all of you guys and we very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It'd be nice if it was our last one. Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Karen.
Welcome, boss.
Sandy.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have a public hearing. And this is a hearing regarding the appeal by Dean Alterman for Pam and Steve Gaddis of a planning commission denial of B 2406. Pamela Gaddis application for a variance to lot coverage requirements in conjunction with alterations to an existing mixed building. Property is located at 180 West Jackson Street, tax lot 2400, map 51030 AD. A residential medium density R2 zone. The application will be reviewed against the criteria of Municipal Code 17.90 variances. As the council determined on December 5th, the city council's role in this appeal review the record of the proceeding before the planning commission, along with the appeal documents, and conduct a public hearing considering solely the evidence heard in the record. In making this decision, the commission must apply the applicable codes and laws and cannot vary from or change those laws or codes. So I'm going to open the public hearing. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the city council to hear this appeal at this time? Does any councilor believe the team has a personal bias to declare?
While not having a personal bias nor a conflict of interest, I've been advised by Bill Kabizman that as I presided on the planning commission over the initial decision of this, that should not be part of the appeal of this decision. So I'm going to recuse myself to the audience until
Okay,
this
great.
hearing is complete.
Makes sense.
Make
I'm
sure you,
here to go right back over.
yeah. Make sure you don't. Thank you, Eric. Does any counselor believe he or she has a conflict of interest? Has any counselor made any ex parte contacts or made a site visit?
Site visit.
Site visit.
Site
Site visit. Is there any additional correspondence?
We did receive 4 additional documents from the applicant's attorney, Attorney Raju. And staff had the opportunity to speak with attorney Bill Kabizman, who had indicated that the the documents were new evidence. Since this is a hearing on the record, that the council should not receive those documents to review as part of this hearing because it's on the record of the plan commission meeting. And attorney Kabizman's on if anyone has any questions.
I have a question. Are there any documents in this packet that we've received that we should also not consider? Based on the fact that it's on the record, is there any new evidence? Packet.
Yes, there is a particular section, and this will address some of the criteria, but the appeal identifies two additional pages, pages 2 and 4 of attachment A, which is the actual appeal application. And it provides additional evidence on issues that were not presented at the plan commission meetings.
And so therefore, since this is on the record, those should not be considered.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that is on the second page of the staff report in the first paragraph under preliminary issues.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to request a staff report.
Okay. Evening, happy new year, council. Congratulations, council. I look forward to working with you as well as the mayor and the son Gary. On October 20th of 2023, the Community Development Department issued a violation notice regarding the structural alterations for which a building permit had not been issued for construction at 188 West Jackson Street. The alterations included the enclosure of both upper and lower level decks on the western facade of the residential portion of the structure and conversion of those areas into habitable space. As this is a mixed-use building, the structural alterations required review and approval by the Design Review Board, and the board approved the project during its August 2024 public meeting. And a condition of approval is that the applicant obtain a variance to the lot coverage requirements prior to issuance of a building permit. At the September 26, 2024 Plan Commission meeting, the Planning Commission rendered a decision to deny the variance application. Pamela Gaddis, the property owner, did request review of that decision. And the City Council held a scope to determine how the hearing would be held, and the determination was on the record. The staff report starts with the Planning Commission's decision and then intersperses the applicant's comments and concerns about the Planning Commission's decision. Staff report will generally identify the issues and discuss them. Under the preliminary issues, we spoke about the initial pages that should be that shouldn't be considered or are new evidence and shouldn't be considered. And additionally, the council should be careful in applying the variance criteria in this situation because it's an after the fact permit. Any hardship or difficulty from removing the unpermitted improvement should not be considered, but this is also not the appropriate procedure to punish the applicant for taking their actions. The council should review the request as if no construction has taken place and the applicant is simply asking for permission to take these actions. I can go through the variance criteria and the comments if you wish. I'm sure you all had received that and had reviewed that. Attorney Kabizman is here as well, but basically the Plan Commission found that none of the variance criteria were met that made their decision. So I can answer any questions now, or I'm available for questions as hearing moves forward. And Bill is on the line as well.
Well, I do have a question, and that question is why is this even before us? Because what should have happened is the Design Review Board's decision that they needed to have a variance should have been the thing that was appealed. We shouldn't be hearing this now, a new variance application. That makes no sense to me. Why would even be hearing it? Because this is the process is incorrect. It should have been a appeal of the DRB decision that they needed a variance, period. That's where it should have started. And whether or not they would have been granted one is another matter, but I don't understand why that avenue wasn't chosen.
Yeah, and that's, and as far as that, that would be a question for the applicant from our perspective. They went through it, they didn't challenge the decision from the DRB based on the DRB's condition. They did go to Plan Commission and the Plan Commission denied it. So that is why we're here. I'm not saying it's the right answer. I don't know if Bill has anything additional, but this is the process that's been followed and the appeal has been based on that variance application to the Plan Commission.
All right, let me unmute myself. That is certainly an avenue that could have been chosen. The way it worked out was the violation was noticed. They were asked to apply because of certain aspects of it. They were sent to the DRB. The DRB then said, okay, we'll approve it so long as you get a variance. And then they came to the Planning Commission for a variance. One alternative might have been to appeal whether a variance was required or not. For whatever reason, they chose not to do it. They filed the variance request, and that's the application we have in front of us. And so that's really what's in front of the council. Whether there might have been other ways to do it, don't know. But the DRB was the one who said, you got to go get a variance. And that's what the applicant did.
Okay.
And I think, one of the comments I would make too is, depending on what decision the council ends up making, that could be, a basis for a decision as well.
Steve, when in this process did the construction start or finish?
The construction, I'm guessing, started sometime in the summer of 2023. And the complaints came in and we, Community Development Department, submitted letters to the applicant informing them of the violation. We worked with the applicant. They were talking about certain architects and different things that they were getting. So we gave them some time to work on that. They changed architects. And so finally there was a point in time where it was like some type of action needed to occur. Deadlines were provided to say, hey, you at least got to get this to the DRB to have them hear that. They submitted that approximately August of 2024. So it took some time before we got this, trying to work this out. And it just, so it's been some time since the project has been, they did stop work when they received the order, but it's been sitting since basically October of 2023.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, so I'm going to call for public testimony. The appeal will be reviewed under Municipal Code Section 17.90 variances. The hearing will be held on record and no new evidence will be allowed into the record. The pertinent criteria to be considered are identified in the staff report, which was made available to the public 7 days in advance of this hearing. Staff has analyzed the appeals issues relying on the reasoning set forth in the Planning Commission's decision. Persons who testify shall first receive recognition from the mayor, state their full name and mailing address, and if appearing in a representative capacity, identify whom they represent. All testimony is limited to matters which were raised at the Planning Commission hearing in writing or orally. No new evidence will be considered. Testimony must be directed towards those criteria or other criteria in which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or with reference to record to record evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
Yes, good evening. My name is Sunil Raju. I'm an attorney here on the coast. Mr. Dean Alterman prepared the written presentation of the appeal that I'll be appearing tonight on his behalf. I'm here on behalf of the applicants, Pamela and Stephen Gaddis. And I wish to first start with thanking the City Council for hearing this appeal. And I think I'd like to mention what I think is an important point here, which is the big picture in terms of what's going on and how we got here. And I'd like to talk about the big picture, then talk about the Planning Commission decision in terms of how they decided the criteria applied. Third, I'd like to talk about the scope issues. And then fourth, I'd like to close by requesting the desired outcome for the applicant. First, in terms of the big picture, as any property owner knows on the coast, at times, especially with ocean-facing property, there's going to be moisture penetration and wood rot. And that is a circumstance that the Gaddises found themselves in back in 2023 when they discovered moisture damage. And so it was in search of a solution to this problem that led them to pursue the path that they did. And I want to make sure that we don't lose the forest for the trees in terms of what began this path. Certainly, I think the record, even based on the record from the Planning Commission, would support the story, if you will, of how we got here, that they encountered a common problem that we often see with properties on the coast, and they went about looking to solve that problem. We would acknowledge, as far as how they went about it, it would have been better to seek a building permit back then. But we would submit that the solution that they pursued in order to resolve the issues, in other words, there was more penetration to the west side of their property, and as specifically involved here, the first floor has a patio that's west facing and a balcony on the second floor that's west facing. And it was these areas that encountered the moisture penetration where they decided to pursue a resolution. The resolution that they did was to replace the damaged wood as well as enclose the existing areas. And I would note, even on the Planning Commission's record, they did not increase the buildable area or anything of that nature in terms of lot coverage. By doing so, they did so within the existing footprint of what was already there. So again, we would acknowledge that in hindsight, it would have been better to pursue a building permit. But we want to emphasize that even on the record of the Planning Commission, there was no change to what we often call the footprint and these similar words that we use in this context. I'd like to talk to you about what I see as the key issues in terms of the Planning Commission's decision. And the planner, Mr. Sokolowski, already covered this in some respect. Know that your honors have the record before you. You have the staff report and the applicant's presentation as well. So I'm not going to necessarily rehash. I would like to just cover how I see the highlights and would ask you to consider them in your deliberations tonight. And I'll go into that at this time. So in terms of the criteria that the Planning Commission considered, the first criterion was to do with enforcement of the specified requirement would result in practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship and would be inconsistent with objectives of the city's comprehensive plan. Now, that's a conclusion. And so we ask that the City Council take a fresh look at whether the underlying record supports that conclusion. And we would respectfully say that it does not. Again, I want to take us back to the problem that led to the resolution pursued by the Gaddises. That is, the problem was the wood rot. The solution was the enclosure of the areas involved. And so in this enforcement criterion, the Planning Commission found that, quote, there were no practical difficulties or hardships involved in the construction of these building alterations. Now, I would ask you to look back at that criterion. There's no discussion of that the hardship has to be incurred in the quote construction. That's something that was added in that interpretation, but that's not what the code says. The code talks about hardship and in a more general fashion. And interpreting that to the situation, we ask that you look at that from the perspective of what's fair on the face of that language. The fact is, it does not say that the hardship would have to be incurred in the construction, as well as fairness from the perspective of a property owner who's expected to comply with these criteria. And we would submit that the hardship that was incurred here has to do with a property owner who has a legacy property, if you will, one of the older properties in their neighborhood that experiences, again, a common problem, the moisture problem on the ocean facing side. And the hardship from our perspective would be even on the record before the Planning Commission that if they're left with no resolution there, certainly no one wants to see the buildings deteriorate as we sometimes do about town. I think that would certainly be a hardship in a straightforward manner from the property owner perspective. And in fact, I think that property owners in the community, neighbors and such would hope that that property owner would take initiative to resolve the issues. Regarding the second criterion, this refers to exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that apply to the property that do not generally apply to other properties in the same zone. Here, we believe that the first criterion I just mentioned, the hardship one, is a very strong one in favor of the applicant. Here, it seems highly subjective of what's an exceptional ordinary circumstances. We would submit this is a little bit like a forecast of Nostradamus. You can read into it what you want. We submit that where there's an equal interpretation in favor of the applicant, that the council look at the record from the Planning Commission and see that one could find that the circumstances of the property involved support this criterion. Again, by way of background, in terms of the type of property we're talking about a mixed use property. We have the primary residence of the Gaddises where this work was actually done. And then adjacent, we have two motel units that are on the same property that have been there for a number of years. And I think that, again, to leave a property like that subject to deterioration without sort of a common sense resolution is, I think, something that we wouldn't want to see in terms of those properties. And I would submit that properties that are so close in to the ocean on the west side of town are going to be more subject to accelerated deterioration. They're going to have a faster rate of these properties than other properties. Third, the criterion talks about granting the variance will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare, or materially injurious to properties or improvements in the vicinity. And with respect, we found that the finding by the Planning Commission that the Gaddises were increasing the intensity of the existing legal non-conforming use was puzzling because you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to increase the intensity of the use? These areas on the west side of their home, remember the first floor was a patio before, it's a patio. It was a balcony before, it still is a balcony. So we're not talking about changing what the use or the character, if you will, of the properties was in that respect. And there's no evidence in the record to suggest that after the enclosures happened, somehow the use by the Gaddises or their guests changed. And so in our view, with respect to the Planning Commission, this is a little bit of a circular criterion. So in other words, they're saying there's an increase to the intensity, but again, where's the record to support that in a way that one could explain in plain words? We just don't see that. And for that reason, believe that criterion is strong in favor of the applicant. Finally, in terms of the fourth criterion that's mentioned in the decision, granting the variance would support policies contained within the comprehensive plan. Again, I think when we're looking at this property, one is to look at the character of the property involved. It appears in the planning commission record, there might have been confusion about whether the work involved the residents, which is, nobody disagrees that it was actually the residents involved with the enclosures versus these two motel units that are adjacent. And so in looking at this, the city council should look at this the same way they would look at any residence and how we would want to see property owners going about, again, trying to solve this original problem of moisture penetration and wood rot. Now, I would like to talk thirdly about the scope, and we do understand that prior to tonight's hearing that the scope in terms of the proceeding was determined by the city council. And what I'd like to suggest is, as you're considering this case after hearing all the comments, that you look at whether it's in the right posture before you. What I mean by that is, do you really have the correct information before you to make the right decision? So that, again, within the big picture, we're encouraging what I hope is the right result in terms of a proportionate response to the problem. So in other words, the Gaddises were trying to solve this moisture problem. They closed the areas that they did. We acknowledge they should have obtained a building permit. Can we pursue a resolution that's proportionate to that, that's not overly harsh to what happened here? And so in terms of the scope, I would submit the city council has the authority to either stick with its original decision, which was to limit to the planning commission record. I would submit to you that that record is actually not very good or helpful. In a way, it's more helpful to the applicants, because if you just stick to the record, we think that their decision is not really supported. But if you wanted to see a fuller record, you could remand back for reconsideration. You could actually expand the scope today. We have several documents, not too voluminous, which we think would be helpful. But the code section involved there is 17.18.040. And I do think that if you find yourself scratching your heads as you're looking at this, in my view, as the applicant's counsel, I would urge you to consider those kinds of options. I would close by talking about this particular property and these owners in comparison to other matters that are before the city council. And I'm sure here in Cannon Beach, there are problem properties which come before the council periodically because owners are trying to do something repeatedly in different ways. They're trying to skirt issues. Maybe you have owners who are disrespectful to neighboring owners and causing problems, and they're just always causing drama. And I would submit to you, by contrast, the Gaddises have owned the property since 1997, completed construction of their home in 1998, and they've resided at the residence for 11 years or so. And in that period of time, they have not caused drama within the neighborhood with adjacent property owners. And I mention that by contrast to folks who do show up, and there's lots of issues like that that accompany a particular appeal or presentation to your honors. So what we would ask is that your honors disagree or reject the Planning Commission's decision. If you're wanting to see this case take a different path without just outright denying the appeal, we would submit that you have the option of remanding back for more work at the Planning Commission level. And I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
I have a question. How many square feet of living space was added by enclosing the porches?
How many square feet of living space?
Floor area ratio. I'm not talking about the footprint. I'm talking about floor area ratio, increased living space. By enclosing the two decks, you would have to increase the living space according to the way it's defined in our ordinances. So by how many feet was, how many more feet of floor area ratio was created without a permit by doing this?
I would say, Councilwoman, two things. One, in order to answer that question, I would be looking at evidence outside the record. If the council is open to it, we have site plan drawings with annotations in Exhibit G, which again, we asked to offer, but we understand is beyond this.
Then I withdraw that question, but I will make the remark that you did increase, you'd have to increase the floor area ratio when you enclose a porch. And that goes to the intensity issue completely. I was at the council meeting, the planning commission meeting for its entirety when this came before them. So I know that that was part of the decision for the intensity of the property, intensity of the use. Because there's more living space, there's going to be more people there. Okay, the possibility of more people on the property staying there. So that's why I asked, there was an increase in the floor area ratio, if you will acknowledge that there was.
Well, again, by acknowledging that, we're referring to the issue that's not in the record. But I would say that to the extent that you're making that point, what we would say is, first, again, it depends on how you interpret intensity, where there's no further definition of it. But we would say there's no record on the planning commission record that the way in which the Gaddises have used the property has changed or they intended to. But by definition, if you're saying that, looking at that technical issue, if you define a change to that metric as a change in intensity, you choose to take that interpretation, then I suppose that's a general interpretation that could be taken of different interpretations of intensity.
Well, if there's more living space in a house, there's the possibility of more people staying there or living there or being there. That's all I'm saying. And that's what they were talking about. And they talked about intensity. I was eating, I heard them. That was, as I recall it. So I just wanted to. And anybody else have questions?
Can you repeat, was this water damage discovered? Or was it a storm? What was the circumstance?
The circumstance was in 2023, it was first discovered that they had moisture damage. And then, I'm sorry, let me say that correctly. It was discovered in 2022 that they had moisture damage. And it's 2023 that they realized it was worse than that. And then there was wood rot. And 2023 is when they did the work on the enclosures.
And the work that was pursued, was it did it have architectural designs?
So I would say three things. One is there was replacement of damaged wood. So there's replacement of materials. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect, there was the enclosures, which is a new aspect to these structures on the west side. The third is there are engineering drawings that the Gaddises had done to ensure that obviously they want to be intelligent about making any changes and not create more problems that they're trying to solve.
So you went with architectural engineering drawings, but no building permit?
Well, what we would say if we were able to open the record is that Ms. Gaddis had a conversation a number of years ago with staff informally and believed that she would be able to enclose the structures on the west side. But again, I think in terms of the record and the scope, I want to respect that, but that would be the answer if we were going to the relevant or the logical explanation of what was in the head of the applicants when they did the work they had done.
And you felt enclosure was necessary rather than just repair?
Yes, their position was that to slow down the rate of deterioration, because most likely no resolution would just prevent the issue from ever recurring after enough time. But their thought process was that, we've seen the problems that arise, the moisture penetration would rot. Perhaps the way in which those structures were on the west side being open was not the best. So I would submit that in that thought process is pretty straightforward to say, well, maybe if we somehow block the airflow and moisture, we can hopefully slow down the next time we have to do any work on the west side.
Would you agree that we're not here on whether or not they should have whether or not they would be permitted to have a building permit? If they had applied for one, what we're here is on whether or not they meet the criteria of a variance, which is a whole different question.
I think some of the same considerations are there because if we look at the criteria of the variance, they allow for consideration by this body of many of the same types of details or issues. For example, if we look at the criteria for the variance, one of the criteria is whether enforcement of the requirement will result in practical difficulty or necessary hardship, which I think going back to the record, I think that would support the idea of looking at problem they were trying to solve and seeing whether it would be helpful to the applicant to avoid hardship in the particular case.
But that's not my question. My question is, there's two different ways of, if the Gaddises had followed procedure and gone to the city and requested a building permit, just, to enclose their porches, the city would have looked at all the different things and made that decision. That's not what we're here today to decide, whether or not they should have a building permit. We're here to decide whether or not they should be granted a variance. When people apply for building permits, they're not the same criteria as a variance.
And I'm answering, looking at the criteria. I believe our presentation is based on the criteria of the variance that the planning commission.
I understand that, but I'm just saying is the argument whether or not they would have been granted a building permit isn't really the issue. It's whether they meet these variance criteria, which are different than a building permit criteria.
I do agree that the technical posture and the steps would be different. But I'm simply saying, I think the nature of the issues they're trying to resolve, I would submit would come up either way. But I do agree there's different procedures that would be pursued in this case or in that scenario.
Any other? Okay, is there any other presentations by applicants? Did you guys want to say anything?
Very good. I'm Pamela Gaddis, PO Box 220, Cannon Beach, Oregon. And I want to thank you for hearing this tonight. Appreciate you all here. I'm very nervous to talk, so appreciate it. So I guess there's a couple of things I might mention, and you can ask me questions as well. The main thing with the project that we did was to try to fix a water leak problem that happened, a rot problem that we discovered. To repair it the way that it had been built would just be to ask for the same problems again, because the way the structure was just encouraged water to pool in certain areas. So enclosing it, when I was listening to some of the questions, enclosing it made a lot of sense and solved the problem completely. Our home is watertight. It's well built, and it solved any issues with the weather. So that is one. Also, where there was a structure of the covered patio and the covered balcony, there was a covered patio and a covered balcony before. The structures were already there. We, in essence, closed them and fixed all of the damage. They were already there. No square footage was changed. No footprint was changed. We just enclosed areas and fixed all of the damage and updated that look. So it looks nice in the neighborhood. And the only thing that we had, we're very exposed out there. So neighbors would walk by all the time and that just that it looked very, very nice. I guess that's what I would want to say. So we live there permanently. We're part of the community. Cannon Beach is our home. We care about it. And this means a lot to us. It is our home and we want it to be a good, strong home that withstands the weather. And that was the whole purpose of doing this. And there's even a little bit less lot coverage because there's that overhang. That part of that was cut back a bit. So this lot coverage, just a small little bit of, but it's still less lot coverage than even before. So if that is helpful in explaining part of it, I just wanted to share that with you. Yeah.
Would you like to ask questions, Ms. Gaddis, before Mr. Gaddis speaks?
I just wanted to ask Steve, attachment D, is that part of the record?
I'm not familiar with what.
Attachment D in our packet. I'm trying to determine it's
See.
it's an appendix, staff report. There's that, and then there's.
Yeah, all the list of attachments that are on our staff report are included.
So I want to know if these photographs part of the record that,
Yes, they are.
okay,
Those were all documents that were part of either the design review board consideration of the project or the plan commission. So all of the attachments that are listed on the staff report were part of those records.
so this one that has the new, what the floor area ratio was and what the new floor area ratio is are all part of the record.
That's correct. The one that has the certain numbers as far as floor area ratio.
New floor area ratio being 3,265 feet.
Yes.
That is part of the record. Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Mrs. Gaddis?
Mr. Gaddis, would you like to say anything?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So, there was a question as far as the water damage. It wasn't just one spot. It was the whole wall from ceiling to floor. And it was all rotted out and molded. And the timbers were basically turned to dust. So it wasn't just a, minor thing, but we didn't know because it was in behind the sheetrock and we saw some moisture on the sheetrock, and as I opened it up, further and further and further and further, and end to the other, and from ceiling to floor. I mean, I'm really surprised that the whole place didn't collapse because evidently had been happening for a long time. It wasn't just an overnight deal. So it was, pretty scary really, and rotted timbers and everything else, you just want to fix it. So that, and knowing how long it takes to get a lot of stuff done, I just, did it myself. I had a couple friends help me. I didn't call a contractor in. And, to my knowledge, I was doing, what I needed to do to solve the problem and get rid of all the old rotten wood and the ceiling tiles and stuff like that, which at this point, it's still all opened up. I mean, the new wood's in there, but as soon as we were notified, that we may need a building permit, we halted everything, just stopped it. And so the interior is not, been finished at all. And, we've always been in compliance. We've, owned businesses here for almost 30 years. And, we pay all of our taxes. We, do everything we're supposed to do. We file all of our permits that we're supposed to file. We're as compliant as possible. I just, it's my fault that, I didn't realize that we would need a permit because it, wasn't. And also the fact that we weren't extending the foundation. We weren't adding a bedroom. It's just my wife and I and my granddaughter that live with us. We have no plans of increasing in intensity of having more people come live with us or anything because we did. So
The patio slab, it's still.
Yeah.
Used as patio stuff.
and it's still got the original just aggregate out there and there's
I can I just ask you, though, you were adding over 500 square feet of living space to your house by enclosing the porches. So why would you think that it would be different? You weren't just adding new siding to the house. You were you're creating additional living space. Why would you think that didn't require a building permit?
To be honest with you, I don't know anything about building or anything like that. I mean, I'm just kind of a handyman. I Google things to figure out how to fix it, but I've never been in building. I've never had anything to do with anything, as far as stuff like that goes. My scope is usually just, fixing outlets and fixing broken pipes and stuff like that. And I don't know anything about what's required. That in the past with some of our other properties, if we had if there was something that we knew for sure that required a permit, we always have applied for whatever permit we needed. And like I say, we always pay all of our taxes and comply with everything possible. When we get an inspection from the city, I just get on and, whatever we need to do and comply.
Or have you applied for other permits, other properties in Cannon Beach?
Not for any kind of remodel or anything like that. Just minor stuff because we do have some rentals, some motel rentals. We've had those for 25 years and they've always been compliant. We've never had an issue with the city as far as, all of our licenses and taxes being paid and everything.
Any other questions?
I have, excuse me, I have a question for clarification from Lisa's question. Excuse me. So have you applied for permits for other properties here or only licenses?
We've never done any major remodeling or anything at any other properties.
Okay, so you've never needed to apply for a permit before, just
Right.
your normal basic business license and things like that.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Are there presentations by proponents? Mike?
Mike Morgan, PO Box 132, Cannon Beach. I helped the Gaddis's with the design review board application. And I should say that the reason that I think the last requirement of the design review board to get a variance was and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I think when they met with planning staff, that was one of the items that needed to be done to correct the problem.
That was a condition of approval or recommendation by staff, correct?
Right. So that was one of the boxes that needed to be ticked off was get, go through the DR, get through the DRB, get through the planning commission, get a building permit, and that's the path that they embarked on. And so that's to answer your question about, you know, why wasn't the variance, why was the variance not applied to the DRB? I personally, my personal view is that the house itself is attached to the two motel units. It's two motel units and a utility space. And if it was 2 inches away from the motel, it wouldn't be considered a multi-use development. But just because when it was built in 27 years ago, it was attached with a firewall to the little motel units. And it's a large piece of property. And I think the confusion about floor area ratio, because it is a multi-use, is considered a multi-use development. The issue about floor area ratio and lot coverage should be applied to the entire development. I mean, I think it's kind of a goofy, it would be a goofy interpretation, but the fact that you know, it was called a multi-use development. I think you have to look at the entire property. I think it's 7,500 square feet is the lot size. It's a lot and a half, basically. And the little motel units are minuscule. So, you know, increasing floor area ratio by 500 square feet has to be taken into account the motel. I mean, that's my view. In terms of the aesthetics, the planning or the DRB agreed that it was a very nice addition to the community. It looks much better than it did before. And the immediate next door neighbor, and I think her letter is in the record. Kathy Filgus wrote a letter praising the project and said that it had been an enhancement to the property. So I think it was a unanimous vote by the DRB. And I think it's the fact that they went out 6 feet on the upper deck, 8 feet on the lower deck, not increasing the footprint whatsoever. And you have to view it in the context of the entire 7,500 square foot lot. I think it should be approved. It just seems like a reasonable thing. I think the planning commission, and with all due respect to the planning commission, I think they were being somewhat punitive by the fact that they didn't apply for a building permit. And sure, mistakes are made. People are confused about what's required by a building permit or not. But I think there's a little bit of these people should suffer because they didn't get a building permit initially, and I think that's very unkind. So I think you have to put the building permit, the lack of a building permit, out of your mind when you're making a decision, and just look at what's been done. And I don't know if the issue of if you want very accurate numbers on the floor area ratio in the context of the 2 motel units and the utility thing, that might be necessary to be provided at another hearing. I don't know if Sunil would want to ask for a continuance, but if you want more specific data, on footprint, I think that can be provided. But, you know, it's a big piece of property. It's a beautiful house, and I think you should overturn the planning commission.
Can I ask you a question, Mike?
Yeah.
Were you hired by the Gaddises to represent them at the design review board and at the planning commission?
Not the planning commission.
You just did that voluntarily,
Correct.
but you did represent them there.
Well, yeah, right. No, I'm sorry. I was hired at the planning commission.
You were hired by them, but both to represent them in front of both.
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other presentations by proponents? Okay, are there any presentations by opponents? Okay, is there a staff response?
No.
Does the applicant wish to make any additional comments?
We would just say that based on the record, we believe that the city council has the option of overturning or disagreeing with the planning commission. But if you want more information, there's other options such as a continuance available to you. We're happy to try to help you make the right decision. We understand that the Gaddises are in a posture of trying to make things right. So we want to communicate our approach to being been and responsive. So hopefully, in this context, we have been after the fact, but if there's something missing that you would like, we're happy to cooperate moving forward. If you want to stick to the record, we believe that we can have an outcome where you support the applicant's position. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments by either of you? Okay.
Just one other comment. You had asked Mike if he were paid for representing. He was at the first two meetings, and he's afterwards that he wouldn't take any more money because he believed that helping us is what he wanted to do. After that, he's not going to tonight. He's here just to be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing and move to consideration.
I'd like to ask Steve a question. If the variance was denied, upheld the planning commission, it doesn't necessarily mean the Gaddises have to take down their whole enclosure, does it?
What would happen if it got denied? The structure would need to be removed and they would need to basically bring it back. I know there are some photos that show what it was previously, but it couldn't be any more intense than what was there previously. So basically what we're talking about is they would have had to just simply repair what they had prior to adding the enclosure. So there would need to be the removal of the structures.
And could they appeal that? Would they go to the,
I would leave that to the.
it will never go to the municipal court for that, the Cannon Beach court?
Basically what would occur is it would be an enforcement procedure.
Right.
And so eventually at some point, depending on whether or not it got removed or things like that, it's possible that it would go to court at some point in time. That's correct.
It's like the wall issue. It's the same.
That's similar.
Built the wall too high. Do they have to remove it? Blah, blah.
A similar situation.
Okay.
Different, same concept.
Mhm.
I have a question too for Steve or maybe Bill. The planning commission findings, criteria 3 and 4 refer to increasing intensity of the nonconformity. I'm just curious about that term. Spelled out if that's a legal term. Obviously, it's talking about the increased square footage.
Right.
Added, but can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, the structure is considered what's referred to as a legal there's a legal non-conforming use component. So there's two things. There's a use component. This is a R2 zone. It allows for residential uses. The motel uses are not something that the motel uses were there previously, grandfathered. So that is considered a non-compliant use. If you were to come to us today and that wasn't there, anybody in an R2 zone would not be able to build the motel units. So there's a non-conforming use component, all right, and that's what that is. Then there's a non-conforming structure component. The non-conforming structure is that the building does not meet the 15-foot rear yard setback. And the lot coverage is 50% in an R2 zone. This property is the buildings and all the other components, drives, structures make up 62%. So a person coming in on a vacant property can only build up to 50%. So the legal non-conforming structure component is the setback and the fact that the structure itself was non-conforming and increasing the intensity or the use, taking it from patios and decks to livable space is increasing the non-conformity.
And so that could have some impact on neighboring properties in the.
There was mention from I believe it was Mr. Richard Burt. I'm sorry, I'm going to chop his name.
He's sitting right behind.
Adi, who had indicated, hey, this is 400 square feet. Other people have to go through. So there were some concerns out there, about the fact that others would not have had the ability to do the project. They are allowed to go up to 50% where this is already at the 62. So there were some concerns. And I think the neighboring property to the west also came in. I think it was a duplex that someone was rebuilding, and there was land use approvals to that one as well.
Yep.
Is the neighboring property to the west the one that wrote the letter, or was it
I believe that was to the north.
the north?
I think the gentleman to the west who is doing construction out to the duplex had some concerns, I believe, with regards to property lines and things of that nature.
Okay.
And use of the driveway and things of that nature.
Well, I was like I said, I was at the planning commission meeting. And if I recall, it was a unanimous vote to turn down this variance. I think that the criteria of the variance aren't met. I honestly think that that's true. I don't want to see them have to rip out what they put in. And I would hope there'd be some other solution. But if we're here to decide whether the criteria of whether we can uphold the planning commission's decision that the variance criteria aren't met, I, for one, can't see how they are. First of all, taking A1, unnecessary hardship or practical difficulties created by literal interpretation of this ordinance, I see none. 2, extraordinary circumstances, nothing involving the construction of these buildings improvements that do not apply to other properties in the vicinity. Everything that applied to their construction of building improvements would apply to any other in the vicinity. 3, is it materially injurious to surrounding properties? Well, there was discussion about increased intensity because of increasing the floor area ratio of the structure, which is in the record already. We don't need a continuance. There's a piece of paper in here that shows what it was before and what it is now. And whether it supports the policies of the comprehensive plan, I don't buy the argument that this making the house bigger supports any of the policies of the comprehensive plan. So especially the one that says the area between Taft and Gower and between the ocean and US 101 will continue to be devoted primarily to residential use. It is devoted, their house is for residential use. However, along Hemlock between Washington and Gower, the expansion of existing small-scale motels is permitted, and that's not what this is. But I think the big crux of this is B of the variance criteria. That was A1 through 4, but B, variance is not ordinarily granted if the special circumstances on which the applicant relies are a result of the actions of the applicant. There was no challenge to this finding. So I think I agree that we can reject the appeal based solely on that finding. I would hope that there's another solution that can be reached, maybe some kind of either another kind of appeal or or a discussion with planning on maybe some other solutions such as the driveway and the parking thing, as far as, if that became an issue, because it seems like the variance it called for a variance because it seemed that they thought that we're increasing the footprint, which is not true. They're not increasing the footprint. So that's why I think the whole variance thing, it shouldn't even be here. I don't think it should be a variance application, but that's it, but it is. And so if we have to apply the criteria of the variance, then I can't see how they're met. And I don't like that result. I don't like it because I don't want to see them having to rip out stuff. So I'm hoping that, maybe there's some kind of something that can be done about that, but I can't, in all honesty, I can't see how this is a variance that is acceptable as a variance. I don't care what the building looks like. I mean, to me, it's huge, but that's just my perspective. It takes up it's a giant building. In fact, before this even came before anybody, I drove by it and I think I put in a request to see the plans because it looked so big to me. I couldn't understand how they were doing such a big thing there, but that's neither here nor there. So that's my 2 cents.
Lisa mentioned the parking configuration and that was mentioned.
I think
The staff report, was it?
yeah,
And I didn't understand how that might be, but I mean, I agree with Lisa as far as it'd be nice if there, and I agree with Gaddis attorney that it would be nice if there was a resolution that was not as harsh. But is there something to that parking configuration that changes this?
I mean, that was something that was brought up in terms of indicating that the only way to get it back to the 50% was to do things like that. I don't think that we've ever once talked about, hey, you got to bring it back to 50%. It was more of the existing nonconformity can stay. It's just so, but is that an option? Staff's always willing to talk to applicants and see what other options are available. And just like anyone else, we would do that again, whether it's the Gaddises or anybody in a situation like that. So if that's the end result, we'll continue to speak to them.
And can it be remanded back? Is it possible to remand it back to the planning, to the design review board at this point? Or would it have to go back to planning and then back to the design review board, or is that not?
I think the design review board decision is final.
Okay.
At this point in time, it's plan commission.
What would the process of some kind of resolution look like then? If the resolution is to remove what was done?
It's a good question.
Okay.
And that's why we're here.
Okay.
Part of it. Again, all I can tell you is depending on what direction we go. I'm gonna be working with the Gaddises one way or the other. And whatever direction that this goes, I'm sure we'll be talking and if it's positive, then we talk about the building permit process and what takes place that way. If it's negative, then we have further discussions to see what other alternatives are available, if any.
Well, I agree. We should not consider the fact that they did not apply for a building permit. And we should not consider, also not consider whether the project is an improvement, which it is. It looks nice. We pretty much have to decide on the criteria, and I agree with Lisa that that the criteria for variance was not met.
Anybody willing to make a motion?
I move that we uphold the planning commission's decision to deny the variance.
Oh, Steve.
Have to be more, I don't have the piece of paper. Do you have it?
If I could make a comment real quick. And Bill, feel free to chime in if you'd like, whether or not we want to have the council make a tentative decision in order to draft findings to bring back to council. That may be something we want to consider.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think that would make sense in this case, given the discussion tonight, and it definitely puts a significant amount of meat on the bones of the planning commission's decision. So I would recommend a tentative decision, and we'd bring something back. I believe we discussed briefly, Steve, bringing it back the first meeting in February. Is that correct?
That's approximately when we could bring that back. So, again, Bill, I don't know if there's any type of language, but I think what we'd want to do is potentially just make a tentative decision to deny and recommend that staff draft findings to that decision and bring those back to council.
Yes.
So it'd be a motion. So I'd move to deny the appeal and uphold the planning commission's decision. No, I don't want to. We have to make our own.
So you want a motion to tentatively deny
tentatively
appeal and ask planning to come back with findings of fact.
Yes. Yes.
You want me to read that back to you?
Please.
Okay. Her move to tentatively deny the appeal and uphold the planning commission's decision and direct staff to bring back sets of findings based on our discussion tonight.
Okay.
Very well done.
Bill and Steve.
Just as a footnote, I would hope that your department would work with the Gaddises to come up with an equitable solution. It's possible.
So that was your motion?
Right.
My motion was what she read.
Okay. I will second the motion.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Okay, Council President Kerr.
Yes.
Councilor Hammond.
Yes.
Councilor Hayes.
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Something a little bit. I knew you. So too.
Yeah. I'll be back here.
Let's talk.
Other alternative. Okay, very loud too.
Thank you.
Remember.
10.
Oh, she was trying.
I'll promote her right now.
No, not.
Okay,
Very different.
still in session, please. Okay, next we have a resolution 2501. And we have Kelly Ennis, the HVAC director on Zoom.
Hi, yes. So, good evening, everyone. So we have a budget adjustment for the remainder of this fiscal year for HRAP that is kind of two-part. So the first portion of it is in regards to a previous meeting that we had on September 3rd in 2024, which was about funding an RV site for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services volunteers. So as a reminder, U.S. Fish Wildlife Service volunteers have always come out in the summertime between Memorial Day and Labor Day weekend to volunteer specifically at Ocola State Park, where they had an RV site, and at Haystack Rock with our regular beach programming. And on short notice this last year, they were unable to get the RV site at parks through Oregon State Parks, where they normally had their agreement with. And for the foreseeable future, that was not going to be able to happen anymore. So it was brought up to the Friends of Haystack Rock had brought up if the city could take on a covering a RV site for these volunteers so they can continue to come out and volunteer over in the summertime. And we did not have that included in our budget, but the cost of that is $8,550 for a total of 106 days, reserved from 1 week before Memorial Day through Labor Day weekend. And then the second portion that we have is for increasing funds so we could fund staffing amounts for our regular beach operations between March and June of this fiscal year. Our projected budget that we put together this last spring came up a little short relative to what we anticipated we would be utilizing hours wise. And this was a combination of both increase of hours, not in the summertime, despite not having the volunteer during that time. Our hours increases actually came mostly from the spring and then this fall, which saw higher visitor counts for both those periods, higher amounts of field trip requests, and higher amounts of time out on the beach than we had previously had. And this staffing amounts allows us to fund at our normal regular capacity, as well as include buffer for benefits of covering the staff if we hire staff that is enrolled in PERS, which a portion of our returning staff are. We can't predict for new staff that come on board whether they would be a part of PERS and have that aspect of the benefits added on to the staffing costs, but it's always something that can happen since a large number of our staffing does come from teachers who are looking for a summertime job. And then it was kind of collectively, there were a few a few in addition to just the aspects of the program. Our pay rate was matched to be comparable to the ones that are at our neighboring reserves, which is 24 per hour, and this allows us to attract skilled applicants, as well as experienced employees able to come back and continue to work with us. And yeah, I think most information's in there. I'm happy to answer questions, which I'm sure there will be plenty about this, and about some of our kind of, if we want to talk about our strategies as far as addressing the loss of volunteers over time. That's something that we are working on this next year, but I don't think we can rely on, especially for the springtime.
Yeah. Kelly, I have a few questions. Didn't Friends of Haystack Rock pitch in some money to help cover staff shortages?
Yes, for the end of last year, yes.
For the end of 2024?
2020.
23,
I guess
24.
the
23,
previous
24.
budget, 23, 20.
Last fiscal.
Right.
The last fiscal year.
Last fiscal year, yes.
Yeah. And the thing about the RV site, now I guess I misunderstood that whole thing. I thought the city was actually donating the space, one of the spaces in the RV site. So why is that costing, are you saying that it's going to cost HRAP money?
Yeah, the way that it's set up is we pay for the RV site to the RV group, and it comes out of our budget, yes.
Really?
That's correct, because we also have an agreement with Escape Lodging. And so that's kind of covering the cost with,
Our agreement, we can't donate one spot.
not in our current agreement, we would still have money that would have to go to the Escape Lodging.
Have we approached Escape Lodging about whether or not they would donate a spot?
Not to my knowledge, but Kelly may have.
Yes, previously that has been discussed with other RV sites, and firmly is there's not interest in that.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry, not understanding.
No.
Who wasn't interested? Escape Lodging was not interested in donating a spot to Fish and Wildlife?
Yes.
When was the last time they were spoken to about it?
Our conversations about that began previous to this last summer, so it would have been in 2022.
Okay. Has anyone talked to them since then about this specific site and the fact that the city council is in favor of seeing that happen?
Not since the council, but I can bring it back up again to see if they'd be willing to waive the cost.
I would think they would. I mean, it's, for a Fish and Wildlife person and they're not, I would think they would want to contribute in some manner to the, the program.
I'd be happy to reach out
At
and
least
see it and open that conversation up again.
Yeah, at least be given the opportunity to participate. I mean,
Yeah, that 8550 means we're paying the full rate for the RV site and
yeah,
It says it-
Escape Lodging is getting their cut. And
it's discounted.
paying the lodging taxes and
It says it's a discounted rate.
I don't think, what's the normal price? It says 8750 is average rate / discount. What is the normal price for an RV site?
It depends on the day and on the month.
Well, how is it discounted? How's the 8750 a discount?
I think they did a 10% discount is what we were quoted.
And that was back in 2022?
No, this is the current quote that we have right now if we were to reserve it right now for the 106 days.
Now, if I recall, we weren't able to reserve one last season, were we?
No, well, they, when we went to ask, because of the shortfall, it was too late. They were already full.
Right. Yeah. So there was no
spots.
ask last year, the previous year. This year we'd made the ask.
This year we have made the ask, you said?
I believe so. That's where we've got the information. Did you talk to them, Kelly?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they're holding a space. They're not.
we have a spot reserved. It's not paid for.
Yeah. But so we haven't, okay, well, is it, I think they should, I think a 10% discount, considering it's for a program that benefits the city and brings people here, and is beneficial, is mostly for tourists. I mean, it really is. I mean, that's, I don't know that many locals who go down on a regular basis, but to the Rock, for educational purposes. I'm just saying that I think that it would be worthwhile to ask them for at least a 50% discount, which I think would be still not enough. I think they should give it to us. But, I think that there should be a discussion about that.
We can do that and see if that, I'm sure a written agreement could be drafted up if they would be.
Like in a
amenable to that.
memorandum of understanding, saying that they would be willing to do it. And then, and the other thing I wanted to know, and I never understand this. Part-time, how many hours a week does part-time, is the cutoff for part-time employees?
It's a seasonal part-time, and so that's cut off at the max of 29 hours per week. A regular part-time employee is cut off at 19 hours per week.
Okay, so the ones that you hire are seasonal, so it's 29 hours per week.
At the max.
Okay, and so I'm just curious, so people get, what benefits are included in that if you're a part-time employee?
So the benefits specifically that are highlighted here are PERS. And what that is, and there are others, so we do have to pay for things like unemployment taxes and that kind of aspect that goes with it. But the focus here is on the PERS portion. And so that has to do with, I mean, Tim can answer this a little better than I can, but that has to do with the state laws of when people are enrolled in PERS is based on the number of hours that they work in that total calendar year, which is once they overpass 600 hours. And typically in the past with HRAP, we did not have staff going over that limit. We kept them to about 500 hours per season. But as the season has grown and our ability to recruit people to work out here has become a bit more limited, we've had some employees get pushed into PERS by needing to put them on longer hours throughout the year. And then another portion is people who are already enrolled in PERS. We have to pay that benefit portion. So even if they're not working that many hours, and that's going to be the state and public employees. And it's not always clear when we're hiring someone. We don't know if they're already in the PERS system, and we have to cover that cost. There have been people that we hire that we then find out afterwards that we do have that cost we have to cover.
So you're projecting $91,043 for PERS, basically, for benefits. Right?
Oh, because they're working additional hours.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and it's not a guarantee because it's not everybody that we would hire would necessarily be in PERS, but if they all are, that's that coverage.
Okay. And did we see last year how many were in PERS? Did we get those numbers?
We have from our seasonal employees, I believe we have 6.
And what was the cost? It was what you've indicated here, 59,600. So that's what was paid. Is that what you paid for PERS the last season?
I think that's higher than 2023, you mean?
23, 24.
You're asking a specific number. I think Tim is looking it up.
Right. Right.
Can't work backwards from the numbers.
Yeah, I believe that one's higher than 23.
Yeah, so on the benefits number there, so that's 91,000 total, so that would include all of PERS, et cetera. But that is the total benefits number for the HRAP program, which includes also the permanent staffing. So so we are looking though that we would have an increase of around $31,000 over the on the PERS, PERS, again, PERS, FICA, unemployment, workers' comp, Oregon paid leave, et cetera.
For the additional personnel.
For the additional personnel, correct.
I guess I expected this RV park, but I was a little surprised with the budget for additional personnel. And I don't know if this was something that has just popped up since budgeting. I know we've got, big contingencies, we can cover this, but I don't know if it's something that happened between budgeting and now. So I wonder about that. I mean, I feel strongly that we need to support the, funding the personnel we need for Friends of Haystack Rock, but I was just a little blindsided that we're having to do this through a budget transfer rather than the budget process.
Yeah.
That was the concern I had when I looked at these numbers. I was not shocked at all to see the 8550. That's kind of what I was expecting to see that when I saw the title of what the resolution is. I honestly skimmed it real quick and then when I went back and I was like, whoa, wait, this is not at all what I thought was going to be presented to us. I thought we were the RV site and I was going to get it in there. The 125,000, I think it was mentioned in public comment, as well as when I did the numbers, is a 70% increase in personnel costs over for the 6 months. It's a significant increase in personnel costs to be discussing mid-budget.
You know, I think, I don't disagree with you. But when you look at the change over the previous year for the number of volunteer hours, we're down 80, almost 90%.
Well, you're down 19% for program year 24, which so realistically, this should have been discussed at the previous budget cycle when it was down 62%.
And I believe, well, I'll have to go back and look at the record, but I think that we did talk about that we needed to do an increase. I just don't think we covered it this year. We knew
It didn't get put in the budget.
Right, but there, I want to go back and take a look, because I know we've had this conversation before. To see how much was put in, knowing that we were having to cover additional hours. Also, I think that we extended our season either this year or last season. We went a little bit farther after the birds left. We stayed a little bit longer to protect the marine garden.
And was that adjusted in the budget, projected in the budget?
No, it was post-budget.
It was post-budget?
Yeah. We did the study, had the information. This is something that we'll take a very close look at in the budget series.
So I see lots of information in here about nationwide reduction in volunteerism and that's across the board. But what's noted in the report is back since the early 2010s, a reduction in volunteerism, but it shows in the numbers that you've got here, 2017, there was an increase in volunteerism followed by decreases. Do you have any information to provide to us that why volunteers specifically are leaving ATRAP? As opposed to just national.
Yeah, so whenever we pull our volunteers, for the biggest drop, I think from 2019 came from a loss of local volunteers. That specifically that group was a set of heavy hitters. So this is before my time. But when I was looking back and asking about this, it was a local group of volunteers that invested a large amount of time, but then felt like they couldn't continue to put in the amount of demand that it had. And so there was a little bit of drop off, and our volunteer coordinator changed the procedure a little bit of what was asked from volunteers since then to try to make it easier so people could come and go a little bit more. We got a UTV so we can give people bathroom breaks. So that was like the stopping point of when they could leave. But whenever we do talk to our volunteers, it really does come down to it's just a hard job. And they feel like it's very physically demanding to stand out on the beach and talk to people for long periods of time, even when the weather is nice. But on days, especially where it's cold, it's a spring break day, there's a lot of people and they're not always super familiar, then it can just kind of be exhausting. And so we're hoping to try to find more methods that we can to make them, both more comfortable out there, whether that's chairs, warmer clothing that we can provide, more frequent breaks out of the outdoors to kind of increase our, I guess, longevity of our volunteers of our base. But unfortunately, those are some of the kind of highlighted reasons, is really just the nature of the volunteer job itself. Some of the other items that have been brought up from volunteers and actually staff in the past too is difficulty of getting down parking, the commute time, depending where they're coming from, is sometimes too much. And this last year in particular, we actually had over half of our volunteer hours came from Portland rather than from the local community. And the main reason from the local community is just that they found opportunities that are closer to their homes than having to come down to Cannon Beach.
Yeah, there are big swings in volunteer generally loss. Year over year. We're 60 and then we're 20 and then we're 60 and then we're 20.
It tends to be when we do get, sometimes we get volunteers where it really is a small group of individuals who are super passionate and invest a large amount of time. And then they can't continue to do that constantly, just depending on the year or where they are in their life too.
Do you have a breakdown of the number of hours that U.S. Fish and Wildlife contributed versus the volunteers directly for A-Trap, or is this 330, 412, 1100? Are those specifically A-Trap volunteers, not including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife?
U.S. Fish and Wildlife is included in those.
Okay, do you have a breakdown of what how those numbers separate out?
Not immediately, but if you give me a second, I can pull that up. Okay, it's a little varied from year to year, but from last year to 2023, that would have been 160 hours. Previous years from that was lower at 140, 130, 130, and 120.
And you don't have the 2024 hours for U.S. Fish and Wildlife?
We didn't have one. So
Okay.
that was the year that it was unfortunately, we didn't have the RV park or our RV site.
Did that account for the minus 19%?
It might
Close to it.
math wise be it's definitely a significant portion of that.
So it's possible that really the volunteer hours were not down so much, you know.
We had a known loss there, yes.
So even if U.S. Fish and Wildlife had provided the 120 hours that they did back in 2020, that brings us up to 432, or sorry, 120 plus 320, so that's 440.
Mhm.
So it would have been
So it'd be over.
in from 2020.
Would have been more.
Okay.
Where do we want to go with this?
So we could recapture those hours for $8,500 or a bigger discount if we can. Because if we can get that RV space, then we've got those volunteer hours.
Right.
US
Yes.
Wildlife back.
We'd have more volunteer hours actually if you have that RV space than we did previously, because they were splitting their time with parks. And they would give us 20 hours a week if we give them the site.
So I would really like to see a discussion with Escape Lodging about a better discount.
We'll have that
I can do that, yeah.
discussion.
No problem.
I have a clarification. Gary, you mentioned lodging tax. Because the city is paying the bill, is the city lodging tax portion exempt from the bill on there?
I would have to,
Well, we're providing a service being paid for by the city.
yeah, I would have to look at that, Eric. I'm not 100% sure, but I would guess that would.
Good question.
Yeah.
Collection of answers.
Okay.
It came out to about $54 a day is what with the rate, just a little under.
But we don't know what the actual rate is.
We don't know. I imagine around 60, because she said it was about 10%, so maybe $65 a day to hook up.
Yeah, I think peak summer, it's about 80, it was 86 if I believe what we were told was peak summer.
with
Because
very-
it's different depending on the day.
Who did you talk to at Escape Lodging? Do you know?
Previously it's spoken to Michelle.
There any additional information we want on
Yeah.
the staffing? And I think we need to ensure that they're staffed. I also want to make sure we're maximizing volunteers.
Right.
The program has always been a great example of volunteer city partnership, and I
Yeah.
hate to see this become a paid program, a fully paid program, but
That was one
on the other hand,
moves I made.
on the other hand, volunteers, you know, it is a trend, and this community, it's also tough, so I recognize those things too, but is there something else we want to see in regarding the other $125,000? We're gonna delay this for,
Yeah, well, I think that if they can get this RV space, they're gonna make up those hours with US Fish and Wildlife employees. And they really don't even need that increase in their budget. Except she said something about going up to $24 an hour. So what's the I guess maybe the question is, what's the difference in what's the hourly wage now? And between that and the $24 an hour that you're going to?
24 hours is what we're at.
That's what you're at now?
Yes, yeah.
And what was the shortfall last year?
Roughly 17,000, I think, at the end of the year, we had to do that.
A good amount, but not 125,000. And it would save all those PERS.
I have another question about, in the staff report, it has, you indicate that in the 2024 season, all-time high staffing hours of 8,800 hours on the beach.
Yes.
Who's 8,800 hours? If we're funding 2.5 full-time employees, like where's the, how's the breakdown on that 8,800 hours?
What do you mean? Like, does that include our full-time employees or
Yeah,
what?
how's the breakdown from full-time employees versus the part-time, and how's
Gotcha.
funding for $8,800 being accomplished, or 8,800 hours being accomplished?
The 8,800 hours specifically refers to our seasonal staff hours, not our year-round office staff hours. So our hours on the beach is not included in that. That's just our seasonal part-time staff ones.
Okay, and how many seasonal staff do you currently have? Or is
None
currently
right,
for that?
none right now, but during the season, we have up to 20.
And then 2024 season with 8,800 hours, how many staff is that split among?
20.
There was 20 this year?
Yeah, and not all at the same time. So
Yeah.
some of them are like students that come on just during the summertime or teachers that are just on the summertime, but that was our total number.
So that's about 74 hours a person per month.
If it was
If you do.
equalized, yeah, yes.
So we're asking Kelly to talk to Escape Lodging to see if we can get a bigger discount.
Or just donated.
Yeah.
Or donate, yeah.
And
That'd be a
Let's
bigger
start with
discount.
donate and then.
Yes, yes.
And then work from there.
Yeah.
and if we have those Fish and Wildlife volunteers, would that reduce the ask? Or can you show us a little more what that ask?
So
cover.
the
The wildlife volunteers are not during this portion because they come on for the bulk of next fiscal year. We just would be paying upfront for an RV year for the entire time, but because of the split of the fiscal year, they're only there for about a month before we go into the next fiscal year.
And these are costs incurred, correct?
What's that?
The costs incurred.
What we have is what we've projected based on the current usage. So we've already got what we spent so far this year, and what we're projecting based on usage for the remainder of the year.
All right, and then when we met, we talked about reducing, I recall there were two different numbers, and then we talked about reducing one by 10,000.
There is potential inside, so again, this is an appropriation. So we're just making sure inside the general fund, the executive department, we have enough appropriation to cover this. So there are additional things that the program could try to do to help reduce some of that actual overall impact.
Okay.
But
Yeah, so because this is, yeah, so because it's when we don't have staff right now, the things that we could do to basically reduce those costs is hire more people and have them working less hours each. So we're not doing as much into the PERS portion. We are also pushing back our start date from when we normally would to save a little bit on when we get everyone on board and increase the number of student hires, which are at a lower pay rate. So there's a few things as far as the actual strategies of making it a little more fiscally
Okay,
lighter.
are those considered in 125?
It's not an exact number for the 125. It's a broad number again, from a budgetary standpoint, just so we have the appropriation to be able to spend it.
Mhm.
So if we need to shrink that number, I mean, that again is going to be hours. So, yeah. And again, we're estimating here in January, and hoping we're going to hit that number on June 30th, 25. So.
It won't necessarily be hours on the beach though, because you could have more people working less hours, now you don't have to pay PERS.
In theory, you can, unless those people that we're bringing back already are qualified. for
Right, right.
And you want to keep your returning staff back. I mean, that's a plus.
Oh, no, I
program.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is based on current staffing.
It's based on the current, yes,
Yes.
it's just basically projecting to the end of the year. What we were doing, what we've already spent and what we.
Mhm.
Those are other things that we want Kelly to find out for us or before we reconsider.
Because I would just like to know if there are things that we can do to maintain increased volunteerism. There is a plan for that, or again, are there roadblocks, parking, commute?
And honestly, I feel making an adjustment like this, hiring 5 or 6 more part-time staff is going to be a severe detriment to keeping our existing volunteers.
Right.
Because you're gonna have people that are volunteering alongside somebody else that's getting paid to do an identical job. And that massive discouragement to somebody that's volunteering their time to stand next to somebody that's getting paid $24 an hour. And they're gonna be like, well, why would I do this if I could just get paid to do this?
As speaking as someone who was a staff member and a volunteer, I will say, when you're a volunteer, you get to pick your hours. And that is a huge thing, you know, I mean, if you don't want to work one week, you don't have to work one week, or if you don't, you know, but if you're a staff member, you're expected to work a certain number of hours a week. So it's a huge advantage in that sense, being a volunteer.
And skipping the rainy days.
Right. If it's blowing 50 miles an hour, staying in bed.
And to the point though, it actually is interestingly, it is a bit of a pipeline to our staff. We have a significant portion of our staff did begin as volunteers. So there is a little bit point to that, but it's also a sort of in a way recruitment, because volunteering, sometimes they see the information about volunteering and then don't know that we actually have staff until after they're out there. And that allows us to get someone who is able to actually be scheduled onto a shift and is reliably there.
These are things we're looking for. Talking to Escape Lodging, trying to get them to donate the space, if not modification into the amount. And then something else we've been talking about is that we kind of created a situation where we recognized that we were leaving sooner than what was beneficial, most beneficial for the rock. And so we closed in and covered more hours. So we're gonna have to be looking, in order to reduce the total number of hours, how often we're out there. So we can come back and that'll all be incorporated into the upcoming budget.
Mhm.
Well, I want to make sure that whatever we do, the rock is still protected.
Oh, me
I
too.
think that's a very important.
I agree.
It's a huge difference when there's not
Yes.
people
Yeah.
on the beach with what happens out there.
I have a question though. I've always wondered this. Why isn't that program covered by TLT?
A portion of it is, it's either a portion is or it will be. We've made the decision and gotten information that it's good.
Isn't it all?
I will bring a recommendation this budget cycle where there will be some TLT coverage or TRT coverage.
Why not all of it?
We had the discussion with Ashley and she didn't think it could be covered. Now the position's
Not
changed.
100%, but
We can do a large portion
Yeah,
between that,
especially now because
bathrooms and.
appetite in the state now for changing some of the proportion of funding for other projects that are not just, but this happens to be a project that is directly for the benefit of tourists, really.
We've had the
Yeah.
same,
The benefit of us in that it's protecting the rock. But it's also it's also a tourist, the people who are climbing on the rock and disturbing the bird nests and stuff are generally not people who live here.
right?
Right.
Tourists.
So most of the field trips though are people that are within 50 miles.
Yeah. So our field trips is the
Yeah.
portion of that wouldn't be able to be covered by TLT.
Had a similar discussion about the
The what?
lifeguard program.
Okay.
It's kind of what actually fits within the letter of the law and then how much we feel like we can push it.
I say push it.
We want to be careful.
Yeah.
We'll bring recommendations this budget cycle.
okay, do we have enough information to move on?
Yes.
We have, I believe we have direction if
Okay.
we relayed was
Okay.
what you were looking for.
And then February,
So that would be my next question. Yeah, February 11th, I didn't care if you're still out on the 4th, right?
Yes, I should be able to attend virtually,
Virtually. Okay, so,
but I won't be here physically.
okay, so 11th or 4th?
11th, you'll be here though.
Physically, yeah, I'll be
So
here.
why don't we say 11th? Can we? Is that all right?
Do you want to come back to another meeting or are we bringing this back to the budget cycle?
no, to another meeting.
Okay.
We don't want to wait till
Yeah, I agree.
till February.
So Eric doesn't have to call some
Well,
jungle.
you're planning on attending anyway.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
planning on
let's.
Okay,
Wait, I'll put it on the 4th.
Right,
leave your computer and everything with you.
okay. Okay, thank you, Kelly. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's, you have it.
Pardon me?
5-minute break. Yeah, it's what's been right now.
Well, you can take a break whenever you'd like, Jen. I'll let you go. Does anybody on the council need a break?
Don't, but.
I'd rather
Okay.
just get done.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so next on the agenda, we have appointment of city committees. And we have two committees that have people applying for them. We have two people on the planning commission and Dana Cardwell. And okay, I'm sorry. Do you want to come up and give us a little synopsis? A brief one, because of
I'll be brief.
running late. Okay.
It's the time.
Okay.
First, just want to introduce myself. I'm Dana Cardwell. I've been in the community for about 5 years. Grew up in the Midwest, then went to Colorado for school, raised my family there. Then we moved to Bozeman. We finally ended up here in Cannon Beach. So the family joke is, we've kind of followed the Lewis and Clark Trail. A fabulous place to end. I think this place is magical. I appreciate it for what it has been, what it is presently, and what it could be. On getting here, I got involved with the Planning Commission through some development in wetland and had my eyes open to what the Planning Commission does. It's a great organization. They've put so much time and effort in to a very detailed process and code. By practice, I'm an attorney. I'm a patent, trademark, and copyright attorney. I like the tedious, I like the detailed law. Some people may find it boring, land use, patent law. These are the kind of things I like. So I look forward to trying my hand at something new, put my name in for Planning Commission. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
Oh, anything?
Yeah, you are a practicing attorney now.
I am a practicing attorney now. Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Dana. Steve, would you like to come on up?
Hi, thank you. My name is Steve Wade, 1051 Cannon Beach. I've been in Cannon Beach for the better part of a decade. During that time, I volunteered many hours with the state parks, with the city, currently as vice chair of the Public Works Committee. In my semi-retirement world, I did environmental compliance for 12 years prior to retiring, doing everything from soil testing for contaminants, for compaction, for anything that the soil can tell us, water testing, riparian area oversight and remediation. Working in cleaning up rivers in inner cities. In the previous city that I lived in, I was born here on the coast, and I always wanted to come back here when I retired, and that's come about here, as I said, better part of a decade ago, and I really love Cannon Beach. I love the people here. I enjoy volunteering every opportunity that I get. I had, as I said, with the parks, state parks of Oregon, almost 400 hours last year, volunteering in Nicola, Indian, and all the way down from Nehalem all the way up to Nicola. I would really like to have an environmental voice on the Planning Commission, and not that I'm unreasonable in that respect. I think I'm pretty moderate there. I understand private property rights and what they bring, and I also have worked substantially with utilities, and every one of the properties that we have here in Cannon Beach, of course, has a utility easement access, sometimes a right of way or rights of way on that property, and I'm familiar with all that nomenclature and the utility roles the utility play in property. You have any questions?
Public Works now vice chair, you said?
Yes.
And you plan on continuing that, or are you replacing committees?
I do plan on continuing that. Yeah, I think my second term will be up in about 1.5 years, something like that, Gary, if I recall correctly.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that brought up an interesting thing.
Well, it's not, yeah,
227030.
it's unfortunate.
So because you can't have more than two
Professions
professions.
on the planning commission.
And so I was double checking and Aaron Matusik's application did say he was a licensed attorney.
Both Aaron and Mickey are practicing now.
Practicing attorney.
Yeah, and which is, I mean, that's really too bad. I mean, you know, I think Dana would be a great addition, as would Mr. Waite, both of them. But I don't know, Dana, I believe that the way it's written, the way the ordinance is written, you can't have more than two people in a profession on the planning commission in particular. And that came up with me as well. And I was retired, just recently retired. In that, you know, my license is inactive. In other words, you don't retire, you're just inactive, or you can always bring it back again, but right. And I knew that I had to do that. So that I'm not suggesting that you become inactive just to sit on the planning commission, but I'm just saying, you know, that's the rule. I don't know any way around it. The only thing I would say is that I don't know, well, we'll know more in a while about whether, you know, whether both people who are attorneys currently on the planning commission want to stay on the planning commission.
I'll check their terms real quick.
We do have
I know
openings
Mickey
on other
does.
committees. Huh? We do have openings on other committees.
That's fine. I understand the rule and I mean, when I initially filed, I thought I was, you know, filling a void.
Yeah, I think it's a really wacky rule. I do. I don't get it at all.
This stops any of the local jurisdictions from stockpiling just one background on a planning commission.
Right.
So
Right.
whether they be all restaurateurs or attorneys or whatever, it's their attempt at making sure that forcing us to be as broad as possible in our
Yeah. but-
selections.
But attorneys are not supposed to have a vested interest in something. They're just supposed to have an interest in the law. I mean, that's what their mission is. So that's why it seems crazy to me. But
So did you have a chance to look at term limits?
Yeah, so Mickey's term, and both of them are in their first term. Mickey's expires December of 2025 and Aaron's is March of 2026. So they both would be eligible to renew if they want.
So we really don't have a choice.
we don't have a choice.
So
I mean, we have a choice. We have, no, I didn't mean it that way. It's like, I really, I didn't mean it that way, that.
So I was thinking about this beforehand, and this position is the position that I vacated from the planning commission. It's only been available for applicants to look at for 7 days. Technically prior to us receiving the packet.
Oh.
From when I submitted my resignation and everything. And I think we got two fantastic candidates in, even though one of them is not qualified for the ORS. I would like to see if we could get options, maybe delay this until February, see if we get a broader selection rather than having, not that Stephen, I think his application is fantastic. I think he's well qualified, but with him being on Public Works as a vice chair and Planning Commission, if we could get a broader diversity of having other volunteers, having the option to see other volunteers.
So you
Look
would
at this
propose just keeping it open for another
for one more month
Well,
and seeing.
3 weeks. Wait.
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
And seeing if
Yeah.
that drums up other qualified candidates.
Yeah, I disagree, Eric, because the election was in November.
Mhm.
And you basically knew, everybody knew that you had won the election in November. I mean, even though it wasn't certified, it was pretty clear. And so people knew if they're paying attention and ever even going to a planning commission meeting or paying any attention to the planning commission meetings, they would have been aware that there was going to be an opening. And, you know, so it's not like it's just been 7 days. It's been since
Yeah.
November that people have been aware that there's an opening. So I would like to move that we, well, I don't know how we do this. Do we have these little pieces of paper or what do we?
No, we don't.
Okay,
I know, we did formally post it on December 5th.
right.
That's when it was.
Okay,
formally
okay,
posted.
okay.
And everybody was
My
aware,
question,
huh?
that was gonna be my question. When was it formally posted?
And everyone was aware that even if, you know, even if the election hadn't gone as it had gone, at least one member of the planning commission was going to be as of November 5th. So I move that we accept Stephen Waite as our new planning commissioner. I don't think it's a good idea to wait. I think the planning commission is vital to our community.
Is that your motion?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
Beginning immediately?
yes.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, roll call, please.
And that was. Okay. Counselor Hammond,
Yes.
Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Mayor Knopf.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dana. Remember, there's openings in other committees.
Yeah, the planning, it's just, it's so attorney heavy right now, but.
Right. A good attorney could be used in some of those other ones. Okay, and then we have one applicant for the Public Works Committee. And by process of elimination, I think you might be Jim. Okay,
Yes.
come on up.
Most would stay this long.
Yeah. Brandon.
Been quite entertaining. Good evening. My name is Jim Tremaine, PO Box 96. My wife and I have been vacationing up here in Kennedy for about the last 7 years, and we just absolutely fell in love with the place. And so 3 years ago, we bought a home. We moved in permanently a year ago. And one of the things that drew us here is obviously the natural beauty, but just the way the city is maintained. And I am retired. I'm a retired school. And so I have time and availability. And I just would like to give back to the community. It's a beautiful place. I'd like to do what I can to help keep it.
Anybody have any questions?
How long has this position been open?
This one has been open, I think it was in the fall. It opened, there was, I actually posted it early because the person turned out and did not renew. And I knew that, I think in October or beginning of November, so this position became eligible December 1st.
So you posted it in the fall and then it wasn't vacant until the 1st of December, right, Jen?
Yeah, so
Ish.
I know I posted it by September 11th, because when I looked up one of my last postings on September 11th, it was already posted saying it would be available beginning December 1st.
Still longer than the planning commission, which we just moved forward with.
Yeah.
So I will move to appoint Jim Tremaine to the Public Works Committee beginning immediately.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Jim. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Okay, Counselor Hayes,
Yes.
Council President Kirk,
Yes.
Counselor Ostrander,
Yes.
Counselor Hammond, Mayor Knopf.
Yes. Thank you, Jim. Welcome aboard. Okay, next we have the some discussion items. First, the Cannon Beach Elementary School Rejuvenation Project next steps. And we have Ashley. She's with us. Good evening. Sorry it's so late.
Big agenda.
Hi, good evening, Council. Ashley Driscoll, City Attorney's Office. There's a little bit delay after I get promoted as a panelist and I come into the meeting. So I believe you already introduced me, Mayor.
Yes, I did. It was a stunning introduction.
First I want to start by welcoming our two new counselors, Dina and Eric. Welcome to the council. And then let's start talking about what's next for the CBE. So I became aware that there was some discussion at the December council meeting regarding what the city's, any constraints that the city might have on moving forward with the rejuvenation project of the Cannon Beach Elementary. I went back and I listened to that meeting and I prepared a brief staff report. Because it is late, I'm not going to go through that line by line. It is in front of you. But the long and the short of it is the document that guides us going forward is the settlement agreement between the city and the petitioner with the lawsuit. And in that agreement, the parties very specifically define what the Cannon Beach Elementary project is. And it's essentially the $13 million project that was currently under consideration at the time of the agreement. That's the project that was submitted to voters. That's the project that the voters, said no to in the advisory vote. So going forward, the city has a number of options regarding the Cannon Beach Elementary. So what we agreed to is in the settlement agreement, if the advisory vote failed, the city would not move forward with the then contemplated $13 million project. The settlement agreement doesn't prevent us from moving forward with a different type of project to transform the Cannon Beach Elementary. Some of the constraints that the city would be looking for in moving forward is some of the ones that we had originally, which is, if the city would like to continue using transient lodging tax funds, we need to be sure that the resulting facility meets the definition of a tourist-related facility under ORS 320.300 subsection 9. So that is, always been a big guiding post for us that we need to make sure that this project fits the definition of other improved real property that has a useful life of 10 years or more and a substantial purpose of supporting tourism or accommodating tourist activities. So second, after the election, we also need to make sure that whatever project we move forward with honors the settlement agreement. So we have to have a different project. So a different project could be a different purpose or use of the facility that still complies with the law. It also could be different scale or cost of the facility, or it could be new vision or plan for the facility going forward. So we do have to have a new project. It can't be the same project that we are contemplating back in April. We have to go through a revisioning and come up with different plans and be able to make a reasonable argument that this project is not the one that was submitted to voters. This is a different project. And that could take many different avenues. So as we have in the staff report, I think this is the beginning of the conversation if the council wants to move forward with this project. We have this on the council retreat agenda. Thank you, Jen, for accommodating my schedule. This will actually be for discussion on Friday. And at that time, I'm gonna put together a list of questions and try to guide the council in a discussion about what the council would like to do this project moving forward. So I look forward to that conversation on Friday. I hope this answers any questions that the council has regarding any of our legal obligations. And particularly because of time, I will end it there and open it up to any questions from the council.
Yeah, I have a question, Ashley. Okay, I guess I just don't understand how the settlement agreement can trump the actual wording of what people voted on, because the people who went to the ballot and voted on the wording that was in the ballot measure don't necessarily know what the settlement agreement says. So on its face, the wording on the ballot measure said, voting no to financing the elementary school as a community center / tourist facility. So I understand that it's different in the settlement agreement. There's a further explanation of what that actually means, but that's not what's in the ballot measure. And that's why, how can the ballot measure, how can the settlement agreement, which is only certain people are privy to, or not everybody was privy to, usurp the wording in the ballot measure.
So, I mean, I somewhat disagree with you. I think what the public voted on was the project that was under contemplation, and it has a $13 million, price tag. We're asking them to approve a pretty specific project, but that's not the applicable document. What went to the voters was an advisory measure. And in the documents that were in front of voters, it was very clear that this is an advisory measure that would help guide city council decisions, but it was not binding. What is binding is the settlement agreement. And what the settlement agreement does, again, is very specifically defines what the CBE rejuvenation project is. And that's in the whereas clauses. It's the $13 million, facility with plans already under development. And what we said is that, we would ask voters through a non-binding advisory measure, if they would approve this project. They did not approve this project. So that is the project that we, are bound by through the settlement agreement. There is no legally, the actual advisory vote is not what is legally binding here.
Okay, so if somebody voted no, and they voted no because they just didn't want to see the facility at all happen, which there are people who felt that way, who just didn't want to see any kind of facility there. So they would have no grounds to challenge that because it was an advisory vote.
Right. So you guys, if there was no settlement agreement, you could have done the advisory vote. Everybody in Cannon Beach could have voted it down and you could have still moved forward with it because it's a non-binding advisory vote. What is binding here is the settlement agreement. And that's the document that we need to be careful to honor.
Okay, I understand.
So Ashley, I think you said this, but I'll just restate it and you can tell me whether I heard right or not. So it can be a different project and it could be $13 million still. Or it could be the same project or the same use and at a lower budget. Is that?
It has to be, what I can say is it has to be a substantially different project. We can't, change where the windows are in the facility and say that this is a different project. We have to honor settlement agreement. So there has to be substantial differences and we have to be able to make a reasonable argument that this is a different project. So if it came in at exactly the same price tag, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to make that argument. But if it is a different vision for the facility, it offers different amenities, it is a different project using different architectural plans with a different, mission, then I think that we can make that argument. I think there's a lot of options open to the city right now. It just can't be the same project.
I don't know. I mean, in my opinion, the use is probably not as much in question as the price tag. At least the use as a cultural center, nature center. Maybe the event center is in question, but at a different cost. Do you have anything to say, Ashley? You're nodding, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is more just my observation and through some of the commentary that was at the last meeting it did seem like a lot of the opposition was regarding the price tag, not necessarily the vision of the facility. And, so I think if it was the same, concept at a different scale, as long as that scale isn't, de minimisly different than what we have here, I think that we can likely make an argument that that is a substantial difference and it's a different project.
I think that's going to be a natural. If we reduce the price, that pretty much means we're giving up on one building or the other, or both, short of just trying to patch it up and make it so people can walk in the door legally, which I don't know how many people support that kind of idea, but it would certainly be a different project with a reduced budget, at least a significantly reduced budget.
Yeah.
And
It has
I-
to be a different project.
And I didn't see it was just a matter of budget. I think that a lot of people didn't want to see it be a tourist facility at all. They just wanted it to be a community center. I mean, that's what I heard from constituents.
Unfortunately, there was a lot. There was,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want anything there. It's in a tsunami zone.
Right.
There was, no, we don't need a multi-million-dollar tourist facility. So there were 10 different reasons.
Right.
People voted no.
It wasn't just the amount of money. Though that was a big part of it.
Any other questions for Ashley? Obviously, we're going to talk about this in a day or two.
Yeah, and if the council, if members of the council want to reach out and, you know, provide me some of their commentary or things that they want to be included in that conversation on Friday, you know, that would be really helpful in sort of me putting together some sort of structure around that conversation. So if you have any preliminary ideas, please reach out.
I have some questions for Bruce to bring back on Friday. I'm assuming you don't have the exact stuff, but the specifics of what's been completed at CBE, what all has actually been done and how many dollars, how much has actually been spent of the $4 million bond. I feel like I keep hearing different numbers in different meetings, and the newspaper reporting an even different number from what's being discussed in the meetings. So just having all of exactly where we're at, a full picture of what has been spent, what has been done, and what, if we have a figure, if we have an estimate of what is left to make this facility, as Gary said, the minimum habitable sort of thing, like those sorts of legally habitable, like having that information before us when we actually discuss this.
And kind of getting those items lined out instead of just bulk numbers. So,
Online.
I mean, I think that's what he was asking.
Is there somebody who supports a minimal, bring it up to code?
I think we have to have that discussion at the retreat.
Yeah.
I do. I think that to try and,
Well, I would also like to see additional information. That would be cost of removal of one or more of the buildings.
Well, I think that's a lot to ask in 2 days.
Couple of days from now.
If we're gonna ask for.
I think we could ask for the stars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but.
And why don't we ask for the really potential solutions?
I think that the removal of the buildings, they'd be able to get you an order of magnitude number on that, possibly by Friday. The one about trying to make it meet code, especially if you want to do it by line item, that's going to take more time.
Well, just what you spent by line item, just what.
That's fine.
So what you've spent so far.
So far, yeah.
By line item, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what Eric's asking. I was just.
And I think you guys all know I don't want those buildings ripped down. Well, I don't want to know that. But
Sorry, Barb.
I'll be involved in the discussion.
I know how you feel.
Any other questions for Ashley? Okay, we will see you on Friday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Okay, next, we want to talk about the city council retreat format, and we got a list from Jen on all the different topics. And we know that the elementary school project will be discussed on Friday.
Friday, and it'll start at 11 a.m.
Right.
okay, so.
And Ashley will be there for it. So in terms of what kinds of things we want to talk about on Thursday. Out of our list.
How about the community development? That's a pretty big deal. That's a lot of stuff. And it's all really pretty important.
So start out on Thursday with
Community
that.
development,
Everybody in
yeah.
agreement with that?
What's that item?
Pardon?
Community development.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's TSP, S-curve parking, emails for members outside users, code rewrite update, housing update, STR, and riprap.
Can we add anything to that?
That's related to community development.
Well, I guess I don't know if it would be related, but I think we need to add the cows to our.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that should be, I do too.
A separate item.
That could be under projects.
That is actually scheduled for the January 14th work session. So is that something you want to discuss at the retreat or wait
Oh,
until?
we can wait till January.
Can wait till.
Because we'll have all the people, hopefully.
And
No.
that's really just an update for us. I mean, is it possible we can have an update?
I think on January 14th, no, I think, oh, well, I would like to see it on January 14th. I would like to see even a resolution to spend the money to do it.
Yeah.
So
I'd like to see.
we probably should hear what the options are Thursday and Friday if possible. Is that possible?
Yes, but when you're
Or at
talking.
least an update of where.
Yeah, no, we can give an update and, there's a lot of activity and trying to go ahead and bring that, up to speed. And we can talk about that. But as far as, having it operate, I think that the intent is to get it to operate the way it did originally, only on a more reliable basis.
I thought we were going to try and just replace the system because obviously fixing it isn't working.
But we'll get it to where it was originally meant to do, and it probably will require a total replacement.
Right. And so how much would that cost? Or do we have to put it out to bid or how do we do that?
We have 2 proposals now, and I think by the time you put in a contingency, you're over $300,000.
Okay, well, can we see them? Yeah, so
Yeah, let's have that conversation then.
so on January 14th, we can see the proposals and how much it would cost. We should, maybe even we'll have a third one by then, who knows, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, and so we can,
Kind of a pull the trigger kind of thing, I think, isn't it though? I mean, we need to get that up and running.
right, I agree.
That's why we're going to
Oh,
discuss it
yeah.
on the 14th.
Yeah.
And then we make a decision on how we want to go forward, and then we get a resolution and we vote on it and
Sorry,
We
we,
had that discussion tonight or is there more of that discussion for the
No, I
retreat, I
I
guess?
think we're all in agreement that it needs to happen. Yeah.
so that,
What we'll need from the council is a budget resolution. And we'll set that up,
Can we have that on January 14th?
yes. We can have it on the 14th. I can't tell you that we'll have the absolute number on the 14th. We'll have 3 proposals.
Okay,
So we can come up with a number that's got, enough coverage in it. But we can do that.
but we won't have a resolution because it would need to be in the packet today. Correct?
Well, the packet goes out tomorrow. I don't believe Tim is in the office on Friday, so it would have to be something he put together in the next few days. There are some options if you guys.
We don't need the council to do the transfer. We're already in the process of getting the information. And so we'll just move forward and continue to move forward with that and then bring the budget resolution to you at the first opportunity.
Well, and technically you have the spending authority in that account anyways, because it would just be the other funds. I mean, from a budget law, you have the spending authority.
Right.
So you wouldn't be doing anything wrong. It's just when you figure out where things go and fit, then we can do a budget resolution at that time.
A posthumous budget resolution after the money's been spent.
Well, but you still have the authority to spend the money though. It's just moving it from which bucket to which.
Correcting it for the full fiscal year.
But nothing will physically happen until you folks adopt the resolution.
but then, so we're anxious to have something physically happen ASAP, so how soon can we have the resolution?
When we get the third proposal and after we were able to review the proposals.
So that could be months from now?
No, it won't be months. But you're asking for something to happen, immediately. And
So by the February 4th,
no, probably the meeting that we're talking about would be okay, other than you might not get a budget resolution to do it. We could still have the discussion about what we think is the best way to move forward. And that may or may not be the low bid.
And then you would be able, as a city manager, move forward without the budget resolution, and as long as we get the budget resolution done in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't.
We'll get it to the next meeting.
You're still able to make that forward progress on making,
Yes.
notifying and getting the demo lined up.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of embarrassed. I didn't realize how non-functional it was. I thought maybe it wasn't doing the cow sound, but it was still an alarm. So I'm one of the people who was unaware.
It's been partially repaired. We've been trying to work with it. We inherited it. And the fire department passed it over to us in March of 22. It's, like I say, it's been 80% operational. It's been partly operational. It's just we haven't been able to keep it running. So
do we need
History
to
on it.
discuss it at the retreat?
It sounds like we just discussed it and now we're.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
We did just discuss it.
Right, how's is off? Just
Well, not, yeah, just for the retreat. Careful what you say.
On the 14th.
Right.
Okay, so community development Thursday. What else would you like to talk about on Thursday?
How about an update on City Hall and the police station?
Okay,
Projects.
well, just the two though, because we're gonna do CBE on Friday.
Right.
Okay, so just those two projects. Thursday.
And just as a quick reminder too, this is a joint retreat where we have Brandon and Nancy have been invited also to talk about things. The last time we had a council switch over, a few months after, I think it was like 3 months after the people have been sworn in, we did another retreat because now we've been counselors for a few months, so there are maybe some of these items you'd want to talk about at that point instead also. They're just things that have come up that have been added.
And then is it possible on Thursday also to get, when is that, when is the schedule for that fellow to come back from, Elk Creek?
I believe that was the February work session.
Oh, okay.
I will double check real quick.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, February work session, February 11th.
Okay.
So also on Thursday, do you want to do the public works?
Yeah, let's
Topics.
get that done too.
Because we have to make sure we have staff to do this.
Right.
Probably makes sense to have the TLT conversation with the Cannon Beach Elementary.
So do that on
Discussion.
Friday.
It'll be on Friday, yeah. And then the miscellaneous will end up being on Friday as well.
And then we need to talk about 2025 meetings. Do you want me to stick that on Thursday? Because I don't think that would take very long. That would be a long discussion.
Sure.
Yep.
Now, within these dates, obviously, Friday, I have to start with CBE. Do you guys have a specific order you want these in?
I guess it would, if there's staff involved, it would be what would work for them.
Okay, so if that works for you guys, we'll take the Thursday and Friday, we'll get with staff, see if they're available earlier or later in the day, and we'll just kind of put it based off of their availability.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sounds
my
good.
next question for you guys is what time do you want to have lunch? Just because we need to order it and get it.
Oh, these
coordinated. So,
decisions.
both retreats will be starting at 11. So I didn't know if you wanted to do like,
Isn't there a 10 o'clock executive session before?
but there's an executive session at 10, but the retreat itself
Oh.
will start at 11.
Well,
So,
certainly
So
1 or 1:30
Yeah.
would be,
okay,
yeah.
so we'll coordinate with them with the restaurants between 1 and 1:30.
That's good.
Perfect.
Okay, anything else on the retreat?
Was miscellaneous Thursday or Friday?
Yeah.
It was Friday.
No, it's Friday. Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason,
Yeah.
I put it on Friday. Not sure.
Executive session on Thursday, executive session on Friday.
Executive session on Friday.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so just be able to pack that whole thing. Will be okay. There's one. And I'll send an email. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Everybody clear on the retreat? Deanna and Eric, if you guys ever have questions about any of this stuff, here you, let us know. Okay, so where are we on the agenda? Okay, so next on the agenda, we have monthly status report. Anybody have any questions? Moving right along, I have no communications. Counselor, communications? Anybody have anything for good of the order?
I do. Oh, go for it. You go. Mine's long, so sorry, folks, but.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to ask the council to hold their opinion on the cow system. The cow system has been presented as having been broke for 2 years and nobody's done anything and nobody told anybody. It's been in front of council at least 5 or 6 times. It's been worked on by numerous people, smart people who've been working on this to try to make it work. And we just recently hit the point that we said, okay, we've been fixing this car for a long time. We really have to buy a new car. And that's where we're at. So this has not been ignored by any means. And I think that we've also been protected by the Nixle system, which can send out a signal and a notice to anybody that has a cell phone in this area. So it's not a matter that we haven't been doing anything. It was presented that way. But in fairness, let us get the information out to you so you can make the decision on it. But it's been before the council. It's been discussed at budget time. So there's been a lot of effort put into trying to make the cow system work.
Hopefully that's not a council issue, but I know it's a community issue. Some people are grabbing it and running.
Oh, I understand. No, I understand that. Yeah.
And I think you heard tonight, the council is committed to doing something about that as quick as possible.
And, absolutely.
And let's not discuss the past. Let's just go, let's get it fixed.
And we were already in that position that we're waiting for our third proposal.
Okay, anything else? Lisa?
Yes.
Oh.
Another thing that's come up is being able to get out a newsletter or whatever. We were able to do that because we had this single individual in one department who was also a writer and was able to go ahead and feed that, the bulletin is what we called it. I anticipate having somebody else in a part-time position by probably end of February.
Great.
And to be able to go ahead with the idea that we will be doing a full bulletin on a monthly basis. Just weren't able to sustain it.
Okay,
Excellent.
great news.
Cheap, GPT, cheap ETL, or.
Boy.
What?
What? I'm sorry.
Chat GPT, plug in the words, it'll give you what, write it for you.
Okay.
It's cheap and play. Sorry, it was just, I was being funny. Bruce.
Oh, okay.
It was a joke.
Missed it, sorry.
We don't ever joke around here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Lisa. your turn.
Okay, well, I have a couple things. The first one is I wrote it out, that it has really been weighing on me, and I just feel like it's easier for me to read it because that way I don't go off the rails. Okay.
Go right ahead.
Over the past couple of months, the council and city staff have received some emails and letters from people in Cannon Beach. Some of these letters have denigrated and insulted staff personally. Everyone has a right to challenge actions, policies, and issues that take place in our town. I myself do so regularly, but that is totally different than personally attacking those who work and volunteer for Cannon Beach. And as has occurred recently, when the attacks are not even factual, then it's flirting with libel and slander. I would ask that if someone does not understand or know the facts, that they make the effort to familiarize themselves with the facts before attacking an individual. Ask questions, listen to recordings of past meetings, read our ordinances, read the proposals for the new building code, educate yourself before criticizing. And speaking of criticizing, many of the people that question our policies the most don't volunteer for any of the focus groups that have been formed to address these policies. Instead of complaining, come up with concrete suggestions. For example, a very nice citizen complained about the work being done on Forest Lawn and how it was so disturbing because of the wetlands on the lot. I explained that the building permit went through before the new wetlands ordinance was in effect, and thus it was way more permissive than it is now. Instead of just complaining, he asked a question, got an answer, and is very glad to hear that we have a more robust wetlands protection in Cannon Beach than previously. Unfortunately, the audience has totally left for this part of the meeting, but this is on the record. And if they ever go back and listen to a meeting, then they would hear this. And I really feel strongly about it.
Some of this is on the council retreat agenda as well.
Right.
It's,
But
you know, what to do about it.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay. The other thing I want to bring up is that when we have an appeal before the council, the appellant gets unlimited time to present their materials, but the respondent is limited to 3 minutes oftentimes. And I think that 3-minute limit came about because like during the dunes issue, there was like 20 people testifying. So 3 minutes each made an hour of testimony. But when it's just 1 or 2 people speaking and they're representing an organization or a group, I think that due process requires them to have more than a 3-minute slot to present their information.
And I don't think, I can't think of a public hearing where we really limited people to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think we've done it a few times, but maybe I'm wrong. You know, I could be wrong. I just think that it's really important.
Yeah.
And, you know, that people feel like they're getting to rebut what the appellant says. Otherwise it's just not a fair process.
Okay.
You know, and then finally, I would like to say,
2 things.
it's 3. I would like to say that there was some comment tonight about, you know, private groups coming up with different things like the trees or they're not private, they're not committees. They're not going to have minutes. They're not city committees that are run by the city. They're volunteer focus groups. And if you think writing an ordinance is going to work with 50 people in a room, it is not. It's painstaking. It takes forever. And then it goes to 2 governing bodies for review. So it's not like some committee is sitting there writing up all this stuff. That's not how it works. Anybody is free to volunteer for any of these focus groups. And I've called for each one, said that we're forming a focus group who wants to join. So if you don't want to join, then don't complain.
Okay. Anything else?
No,
There's your 3.
that wasn't scripted, so I'm getting pissed.
Fair enough.
Yes.
I think everybody would like to hear about New Year's Eve
Oh, that's right.
and the raucous fun we had on the beach, especially with the CERT volunteers. They were crazy down there on the beach.
Really?
They were great. We had 5 CERT volunteers, Bob Lundy, Mayor Knopp, Janae Pierce, Mushin, Ken Potter, and Mary Beth Cottle. They worked from about 5 till 9. It was a nice night.
9:08.
Kind of got a little bit wet and then it kind of cleared up. So they were happy out there. We had 2 different contacts with fireworks. We had 5 of us working on the beach and then Valerie in the office. Lieutenant Wilbur contacted 2 kids with sparklers and made them cry. So we're looking at ways to maybe have something in our vehicle that we can swap for that sparkler, make your experience a little bit more positive. And that came from Dan over here.
That's a great
Keep
idea.
working on that. Then we had 1 firework at midnight at Tolovana Wayside. Officer Jordan made contact immediately after the firework went off and took action on that subject down there. And that was it. It was a very nice evening. After 1 o'clock, when most of us left, it was quiet.
You know, a pinwheel, you know, those little pinwheels that go around in the wind, that would be a cool thing to substitute for a sparkler.
Lighted wands.
Yeah.
We're looking at lighted ones.
Oh, that would be cool too, along with the candy bar.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks to the police department for your help too.
Fun night.
Yeah, we did have fun. Okay, anything else? Okay, I'd like to say welcome to our two new members, and these meetings never last this long.
This is a short.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.